Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into some quite dense material. It's a book outline, really, looking closely at therapeutic models.
That's right. And it zooms in on this core tension, this friction between two main ways of thinking. One is called the discipline of reality,
Which comes a lot from addiction treatment. Yep.
Exactly. Deeply rooted there. And the other is the affirmation model, often applied more in identity discussions.
So our goal here is to sort of unpack why these two approaches seem to pull in different directions based on this source material.
Yeah. And the material kicks off with, well, a philosophical foundation. It calls it the two-way street.
Okay, what's that about?
It's basically how our choices, our brain's ability to change neuroplasticity interacts with our biological predispositions, what we're born with versus what we choose.
And there's an ethical line drawn early on using John Stuart Mill, the harm principle.
Right. The source uses it to frame the whole thing around. When does your internal feeling, your subjective world, start to actually cause physical harm to your own body? That's the boundary it sets up.
Makes sense. So to make this discipline of reality idea really concrete, the source uses alcoholism as its anchor point.
Yes, because the conflict is so stark there. The source calls it a pathological delusion.
Which is the belief, I can handle drinking.
Right. I feel like I can drink safely.
Mm-hmm.
But that belief directly crashes against the biological fact that their body literally cannot process alcohol without harm. It's an unavoidable reality for them.
So the treatment under this discipline model,
it demands rejecting that internal delusion. You have to accept the biological reality, even if it's difficult. The priority is physical, biological health long-term, not necessarily feeling better right now.
Okay, so that's the baseline, hard reality. Then the material pivots, doesn't it?
It does. It asks, okay, what happens if we take the principles of the other model, the affirmation model, and apply them back to that alcoholism scenario?
And the affirmation model's goal is generally relieving that internal distress by validating the person's internal sense of self.
Essentially, yes, through external validation or interventions. So the source runs this thought experiment.
And applying affirmation to the alcoholic's belief that they can drink safely, well, that would obviously be disastrous.
It enables what the source calls a fatal delusion. It guarantees physical harm, and that highlights the core conflict. Discipline prioritizes the body's integrity. Affirmation prioritizes relieving that immediate subjective pain.
This leads straight into a really challenging part of the material, its critique of the suicide argument.
Yeah, it's very sensitive ground. The source puts forward a specific viewpoint here.
It questions the idea that the intense distress, sometimes leading to suicidality, is primarily caused by society not affirming someone's identity.
Instead, it argues that the distress is often a symptom of other underlying things. It points to high rates of anxiety, depression, trauma, even autism spectrum conditions, often found alongside this kind of identity conflict.
So the argument, according to the source, is that the distress stems from those underlying issues, not just from lack of affirmation itself.
And to support this, it doesn't just rely on theory. It points to empirical data, specifically long-term public health studies.
Like the Déjeuner study from Sweden, the long-term follow-up ones.
Exactly. These track people for many years, sometimes decades, after full medical transition.
And the data showed this is where the disconnect comes in, right?
Right. The studies found that even years after irreversible surgeries, things like suicide rates and the need for psychiatric hospitalization, they remained significantly higher than in the general population. Much higher.
Which is counterintuitive if the core idea is that affirmation cures the distress driving those risks.
Precisely. If affirmations solve the underlying problem, you'd expect those rates to eventually normalize, to come down to the average. The fact they don't, according to this data, suggests the intervention might validate the internal feeling, but doesn't necessarily resolve the root causes of the psychiatric risk.
So the source material leaves us wrestling with a pretty profound ethical paradox.
It really does. It asks, is it ethically sound to perform irreversible changes to the body if those changes don't ultimately eliminate the very risk, the persistent suicidality they were meant to cure?
And the final thought it leaves you with is this imperative.
Yeah, an imperative for how we should think about treatment. It suggests the focus should be on treating the mind, addressing the delusion or the comorbidities, rather than primarily altering the body permanently.
It really forces you, the listener, to think about what healing or success looks like in therapy. Is it mastering your internal world, or is it becoming more reliant on external medical systems to manage it? Definitely something to chew on.